Welcome, everybody. This is DerekJ Speaks back to you once again, this time to talk about AEW Double or Nothing 2023, live once again from the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada. This show was a bit of a mixed bag, not the worst pay-per-view I've ever seen, but definitely not one of the best. Many of the matches on this show, up and down from the beginning, were good. There was some solid action in there, some good chemistry with a lot of the guys and girls wrestling on the show. The work was there. There was a lot of hard work there, but nothing really felt special. A lot of these matches, especially some of the finishes, felt pretty underwhelming. And one of the biggest pitfalls of this show was the crowd. Now, I'm not someone who is going to really pick on the crowd or really talk that much about the fans and the audience in attendance, but from the very beginning of this pay-per-view, almost kind of up to the end, they really weren't reacting to a whole lot of stuff. Many of the matches were in some cases were big matches and supposed to be big time payoffs and blow-offs to certain feuds and things, and it just really felt like the fans really never got into it. They were pretty quiet. There was not a whole lot of energy or enthusiasm behind what they were seeing, and I guess you could say what they were seeing wasn't all that energetic or enthusiastic to begin with to garner that kind of reaction. I don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know if the crowd wasn't mic'd up properly. I don't really know what the situation was as far as that's concerned, but one of the biggest lowlights of this show had to do with the lack of crowd reaction for majority of the matches. Almost all of the undercard matches on this pay-per-view were hampered by that, with a very unenthusiastic crowd for them. But those last two matches at the end of the show, the two big main events that they were hyping up, while they didn't save the entire show, they definitely made up for a lot of that. And those final two matches, of course, being the Fatal 4-Way for the AEW World Championship and the big Anarchy in the Arena match that closed out the show with the Blackpool Combat Club taking on the Elite. This match was just absolute insanity from the word go, much like the Anarchy in the Arena match last year. This one, the first few minutes of the match, we had the performance of Wild Thing. This time we had a live band perform it, and the lead singer was wearing an all-black mask, and his lower part of his face was painted black. It was a sight to behold, for sure. But the match itself, there's no way to properly review a match like this. The cameras were struggling enough as it is to try to capture everything that was going on. You had craziness over here. You had fighting in the crowd over here. You had people fighting on the concourse. You had people fighting in the ring. You had people fighting at ringside. The monitors over by the announce table. The announce table was at ringside this time. The monitor ended up getting busted up. Referee Rick Knox was out there. He was one of the first people to bleed in this match. Of course, Moxley bled. You had Matt and Nick Jackson each bleeding. Nick Jackson was busted open pretty bad. Hangman was busted open. Bryan Danielson, the blood on his face and hands was Nick Jackson's blood, so that was pretty brutal. You had Claudio fighting with Matt Jackson over by the concourse, and then out into the outside of the building over fighting by a pickup truck. You had Moxley and Hangman. They were fighting over near the stage area, fighting with some barbed wire over there. So a lot of craziness throughout this entire match. And, I enjoyed last year. A lot of these years, they have these garbage matches. I feel like we get matches similar to this on every single one of these AEW pay-per-views. So you kind of get a little desensitized to it and get a little numb to it. But in this case, it was still pretty entertaining. It was still fun, even with all the craziness. It was pretty hard to keep track of everything the camera was focusing on something and then it missed a big spot here because it was focusing on something else and nothing else was really happening. And so they had to quickly show a replay of what we missed. We had a few times in this match where that happened. So production-wise, quality-wise, in that regard, not the best. But, you had these guys out there kicking each other's asses, and they definitely worked for it. And for a crowd that really was not enthusiastic for a lot of this show, they definitely came alive for this match, and they earned that. At one point, one of the biggest spots of this entire match, so Matt Jackson, he got taken out outside, but meanwhile in the ring, Nick Jackson was getting double teamed by, I believe, Moxley and Wheeler Yuta. So he was in a bad way. And then Matt Jackson finally reappears out to the ring, and he gets in the ring and he goes to super kick Moxley in the face. But in doing so, there's an explosion in Moxley's face. So there was some kind of pyrotechnic or firework or something like that attached to Matt's ankle or foot. And so he literally had an exploding super kick to Moxley's face. That's definitely innovative. I've never seen something like that. So that was a pretty creative spot to be put into this match where a lot of craziness definitely happened. At one point, the thumbtacks got busted out, and poor Matt Jackson, he bared the brunt of it. At one point, the BCC shoved thumbtacks in his mouth, and Claudio gave him a big uppercut. So, not a fun day for him. Hangman and Omega were forced to team together. Well, the Bucks were taken out, and so it just came down to the two of them. And these two guys, of course, being former AEW Tag Team Champions, they worked together. They fought off the BCC the best they could. Don Callis, who, of course, just turned on Omega a couple of weeks ago in a cage match with Moxley, he was out there on commentary, and he got up from the booth. He came over to ringside. He eventually got in the ring when Omega had Wheeler Yuta up in position for the one-winged angel, but then Moxley just let Wheeler go, and he slowly turned around and went face-to-face with Don Callis. Then out of nowhere, this masked figure comes in and hits a jumping high knee right to the face of Omega, and he slowly pulls down his mask and reveals himself to be Konosuke Takeshita. Now, we've seen in past months, Don Callis he's been slowly recruiting Konosuke Takeshita. He's been very subtle about it. He's popped up here and there for a couple of his matches. Even in the midst of this feud, it was not too long ago where Don Callis enlisted the help of Konosuke Takeshita to team up with Omega. And after that happened, Takeshita ended up getting taken out by the Blackpool Combat Club. They shoved a screwdriver into his eye, and we haven't seen him since. And so now, after the Callis turn a couple weeks ago, one of the big questions was, where does Konosuke Takeshita, where does his allegiance lie? And we see here, it lies with Don Callis. So he came out, hit the knee on Omega, and then Wheeler Yuta picked up a screwdriver and he jammed it in the face of Omega, and he pinned Omega to pick up the win for the Blackpool Combat Club. Thought that was a pretty fitting touch there, that Wheeler Yuta was the one to get the win. So Wheeler Yuta won the main event of this pay-per-view. After the match, Don Callis was choking out Omega with his belt, and the heels all stood tall. Now, the BCC, all four men, they stood tall. They raised each other's arms. They stood together. But Takeshita and Don Callis, they were standing tall, but they were kind of in the background, off to the side, away from them. So they were almost very subtly establishing that there's not really, it's not like Takeshita is with the Blackpool Combat Club. There was no indication here that he joined the BCC, whereas it looks like he did this favor for Don Callis, and now he'll be somewhat of an ally for them, which makes sense because seeing this finish and seeing this big angle here clearly sets up a big rematch, that being Blood and Guts 5-on-5 double ring 1 cage match later on down the line, where the Blackpool Combat Club will probably team up with either their new member or their newest ally in Konosuke Takeshita to take on the Elite and the debuting Kota Ibushi. I know a lot of people have been calling for this. A lot of people have been predicting that this is going to be the direction. I wholeheartedly believe that this will be the direction, and we will eventually see Kota Ibushi coming out probably in time for Forbidden Door, although I don't believe this Blood and Guts match will happen at Forbidden Door. I believe, much like the last couple of times we've had a Blood and Guts match, it'll be on Dynamite. So that's when that match will happen. But before then, we'll see Kota Ibushi pop up and the match will be made official. So great stuff here in this main event. Very wild, very chaotic, and very challenging at times to keep track of everything and to pay attention and to watch, with a lot of the very erratic camera cuts, but still fun. But even more so than this match, I had even way more fun watching the main event prior to this match, which was the 4-way Pillars match for the AEW World Championship, with MJF defending against Jungle Boy, Darby Allin, and Sammy Guevara. And of course, Sammy Guevara, congratulations to him. He and Ty Mello are now expecting a child, they announced during Sammy's entrance here. So congratulations to them. But this match, after majority of the undercard matches prior to this one was a breath of fresh air, because this really felt like the crowd was fully invested in it. There was a lot of great, fun spots in this match. One of the really cool spots was at one point, all 4 men performed the finishers of each of their mentors, basically. So Darby hit a Scorpion Death Drop. Sammy hit a Code Breaker. I believe Jungle Boy hit Sammy with a Unprettier Kill Switch. And then MJF hit Jungle Boy with a Crossroads. So I thought that was a pretty cool spot. And they had similar things later on. At one point, Sammy had someone, I believe MJF, locked in the walls of Jericho. Darby had Jungle Boy locked in the Scorpion Death Lock. So really cool that these guys were paying homage to some of their mentors and their coaches and whatnot. A lot of really creative, innovative spots in this match where all 4 guys were involved. Of course, you had different points where people were teaming up. The 3, I guess, babyfaces. Sammy has never really fully turned babyface yet, but basically by default, the 3 babyfaces at many points in this match ganged up on MJF, beat him down. And of course, they all fought each other. Jungle Boy had a crisis of consciousness at one point in this match. Sammy and MJF were out of the way. The championship belt was up for grabs to use as a weapon, and he picked it up and teased using it on Darby Allin, but his consciousness got the better of him. He tossed the belt aside, and that was his undoing. As Darby took him down, he went up top, gearing up to hit him with the coffin drop, but MJF snuck back in, and he very quickly placed the championship belt onto the chest of Jungle Boy. So as Darby came off the top and came crashing down with a coffin drop, he landed on Jungle Boy, but he also landed on the championship belt. So that took him down. MJF picked him up and hit him with a headlock takeover and pinned Darby to win the match. He stole the victory, and he once again pins Darby Allin with the headlock takeover. Of course, he pinned Darby in a similar way in their first, and up to this point only, singles match at Full Gear back in 2021 after he used the Dynamite Diamond Ring. So once again, he does it here. So that will be a nice little twist to their story when they eventually have a one-on-one feud later on this year. But this was great. This was a very fun match. The build-up to this match was not the greatest. on paper, the four pillars of AEW competing for the championship, of course, sounds good, very ideal, looks like a nice thing, but the way they built it up, especially in recent weeks, and how they positioned some of these guys to look, it wasn't really great. A lot of the fans just could not buy into any of these guys as to having a shot at winning the championship. Not that anyone really believes that MJF was going to lose his title, but you want a little bit of suspension of disbelief that, okay, this guy has been booked very strong. This one looks like a credible top contender for that championship. He could win. You just don't know. At no point in the build-up did any one of these three men really come off in that way, as that is the guy who I believe is going to walk out of this match as the champion. At no point did that ever come across in the build-up. But I knew, given the four guys in this match, they were going to go out there and have a kick-ass match, and that's exactly what they did. So, great stuff from them. As for some of the other matches, we had two title changes, and both titles changed were the women's titles. We had Toni Storm beat Jamie Hayter for the AEW Women's World Championship. Going into this match, the reports were that Jamie Hayter was legitimately hurt. They were playing up her injury on TV, but behind the scenes, in real life, she really was pretty hurt. But they didn't want to cancel the match, so they went out and had a very heavily gimmicked up match. You had the Outcasts out there providing interference and a bunch of smoke and mirrors that eventually led to Jamie Hayter, who they were working over her injured shoulder the entire time. It was her downfall, and Toni Storm picked up the win after hitting Storm Zero and got the win. She is a two-time AEW Women's World Champion, and Jamie Hayter, I assume, will be gone for a while. I am not sure the severity of her injury. I hope it's not too serious, and then she can rest up, heal up, and maybe she can get back in time for that Wembley Stadium show in August, and she can get the belt back then. But if it's too serious, we're probably looking at much later on down the line for that. But that would line up very well for her. But it all depends on how serious the injury is. As for the other women's title that changed hands, it did not change hands in the first match. Of course, the first match being Taya Valkyrie challenging the undefeated Jade Cargill for the TBS championship. Jade had her entrance. It was really cool. It was a really cool entrance. She came out stepping with her sorority sisters. I thought that was pretty cool. The match itself was actually pretty good. Of the two women's championship matches, this was the match that I actually enjoyed more. These two had a match on TV not too long ago. This match was much better than that one, and the crowd was into it, which definitely helped. Taya did hit her Road to Valhalla, her move, on Jade, but it was not enough to keep her down. Jade hit her with the Jaded and got the win. But after the match is when the real story kicked in. Mark Sterling was out there. He got on the mic. He was hyping up Jade, saying that she's ready to fight anyone, anytime, anywhere, and how there's no one left to face her. She became 60-0 on this show, so she's all good. And then we hear the theme music, and out comes Chris Statlander, who returns from injury. She came out, got a pretty good reaction. I have to assume it was a big reaction. It just did not really come across that way. She came out, and she got in the ring. She was accepting the challenge, and Jade was not backing down. And the two, right then and there, fought. The bell rang, and we have a second TBS championship match on this show. They fight for a little bit, but in the end, Chris Statlander hits her finish and gets the win. So Chris Statlander, just like that, first night back, she immediately challenges Jade Cargill right on the spot after Jade already competed in a pretty hard-fought victory. She faces Jade, hits her with her move, and beats her, becomes the first woman to pin Jade Cargill's shoulders to the mat, and wins the TBS championship. Boy, that's a moment that probably would have gotten a big reaction had it been saved for a later on pay-per-view like All In or a big episode of Dynamite or Collision later on in the summer, but I guess they really wanted to go for a big shocking moment on this card, on this show, and it sure was. I was expecting Chris Statlander to show up after the match. I was expecting her to get in the ring and come face to face with Jade and tease this as the new feud for Jade Cargill and for Chris Statlander to hopefully be the woman to eventually beat Jade. However, I was not expecting this match to end, or this match to happen right here and there, and for Chris Statlander to just win like that. That was definitely shocking. I have mixed feelings on it. I would have preferred they built it up a little bit more, but I'm happy for Chris Statlander. She got a big reaction. The crowd popped for the title change and the big moment there. And Jade, I mean, is it the greatest way for her undefeated streak to come to an end? Probably not. You know, it could have been built up more. It could have been made to feel like a bigger deal, but it is what it is. It was a cool moment. It was a fun moment. And a lot of people were expecting Chris Statlander to be the one to beat Jade Cargill anyway. And so they just did it here. As for a lot of the other matches on this show, not a whole lot special. We had an unsanctioned match with Chris Jericho and Adam Cole that was good, but the crowd just did not care. This match was supposed to be this big personal feud heading into the show, and it really did not feel like the crowd really cared. Sabu was the guest enforcer, but he only really played a role within the first couple of minutes of the match. He ended up putting Matt Menard and Angelo Parker through a table, and that was about all that he did. Jericho and Cole, they wrestled a match. There was weapons and stuff. It was pretty slow in the beginning, but eventually stuff started to pick up. But again, the crowd really just wasn't into it. But in the end, Adam Cole hit the boom on Chris Jericho. He had a chain wrapped around his knee. He hit him with the boom, and then he started just raining down blows on Jericho, just punching him, beating him down until the referee had to stop the match. Now, there's a way to do that finish where it does come off pretty cool and badass, but it just really felt flat here because the fans were not reacting to it. And then later on in the night, Jericho was back up. He and Saraya were backstage. Of course, during the match, Britt Baker came out. She hit Jericho with a kendo stick. Saraya came out to try to fight off Britt Baker, but then Britt Baker ended up fighting Saraya off. So later on in the night, Saraya and Chris Jericho were backstage. They issued a challenge for a mixed tag match against Adam Cole and Britt on Dynamite this upcoming week. So that was made official. We had, to open the show, a Blackjack Battle Royal for the AEW International Championship. Not going to go through every single person who was in this match, but things came down to Orange Cassidy, the champion, and Swerve Strickland. And I thought that was really fun. Honestly, this match should have probably just been a one-on-one match between the two of them. The Battle Royal itself with a lot of the other guys, he had a few cool moments here and there, but otherwise it really didn't feel like that big of a deal. And the fans didn't really care until these closing moments with these two guys. And I thought the finish with these two was really fun. They were fighting over the top rope on the apron, and Swerve is kind of holding himself up, trying to stay up and not fall down. And Orange Cassidy, it looks like he's gearing up to hit him with an orange punch. But then he just casually walks over and just kicks his arm off, and Swerve falls to the ground, and Cassidy retains his championship. They're still pushing the story that he is overworking himself and he is a fighting champion, but he's getting worn down, but he somehow still survived here. But his day is coming. I suspect either at or by Forbidden Door, they're going to find an opponent for him, and his reign will be coming to an end pretty soon. We had the tag team championships on the line. FTR taking on Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. This got some interest from the crowd, thanks to the Jarretts. Of course, I have minced no words about it. I have no interest in seeing Jeff Jarrett on TV in the year 2023, nor his wife Karen, but they are very good heels, and they played their roles excellently in this match. At one point, Jeff accidentally hit special guest referee Mark Briscoe with the guitar, knocked him out. Aubrey Edwards ran down trying to be the replacement, but then she got hit with a guitar by Karen Jarrett, and this got a lot of heat because these fans love Aubrey Edwards and they hated Karen Jarrett hitting her with a guitar. So, heel shenanigans, some classic overbooked mess here in this match. Eventually, Mark Briscoe got back up. He went for a cover. Jeff had, I think, Dax laid out with the stroke. He went for the cover. Mark is on the count, but then it was only good for a 2 count. This pissed off Jeff, who slapped Mark Briscoe, and then, of course, Mark Briscoe slapped him back. And he turned him right around into a big rig from FTR, and FTR retained their titles. So, this story seems about wrapped up. The Trios titles were on the line in a House Rules match with the House of Black. It was accepted by the Acclaimed and Daddy Ass, Billy Gunn. I don't know why this had to be an open challenge considering the fact that these three already won a Trios Battle Royal on TV a couple of weeks ago and have been competing and winning a bunch of Trios matches on TV on Rampage in recent weeks. So they could have just made this an official match. I don't know why it was an open challenge, but regardless, this was still a pretty solid match, a decent match. I thought Max's rap before the match was pretty good. He had a line about Buddy Matthews being a cuck for his girl being with a kid named Dominic. I thought that was a nice little dig there. But the match itself, it was fine. Again, the fans, they were into the Acclaim, but this just what didn't really click with them. Nothing about this match was anything overly special. It could have been on TV, honestly, but it was still fine. And the House of Black got the win when Black kicked Billy Gunn and pinned him to get the win for his team. And we had a ladder match on this show. Wardlow defending the TNT Championship against Christian Cage. This was a pretty good ladder match. It was okay. It was fun. It had some cool moments in there. At one point, Arn Anderson came out and he was fighting with Luchasaurus. He bit Luchasaurus's thumb and had blood all over his mouth. Luchasaurus's thumb was all bloodied. Very odd spot, but it was funny, I guess. Eventually, Luchasaurus was laid out on some tables on the outside, and Wardlow climbed a very tall ladder and came crashing down with a swanton onto Luchasaurus, put him through the tables. But back in the ring, Christian was trying to get up the ladder. Arn Anderson tipped the ladder over. Christian fell off right into a position for Wardlow to hit him with a powerbomb, and Wardlow climbed the ladder and retrieved his championship. So Wardlow is still the TNT champion. And honestly, I believe that's it. There was a buy-in pre-show match where the Hardys teamed up with Hook to take on the Guns and Ethan Page in a match where if Ethan Page lost, the rights to his contract would be turned over to Matt Hardy. I don't know. I didn't really pay attention to this match. I didn't really watch it. I saw a spot where Jeff slipped and fell as he was trying to hit the Whisper in the Wind. That was pretty sad. But then I saw a more extensive clip and it looked like he was selling an ankle injury. So I assume that's why it happened. I don't really know. So it is what it is. The Hardys and Hook won. So I guess Ethan Page now is under contract to Matt Hardy. Whatever. I'm sorry if you like this feud. I know a lot of people do. A lot of people do like this Matt Hardy, Ethan Page stuff. I'm not necessarily one of them, but if you do, hats off to you. Kudos to you. Hopefully you enjoy this match. But overall, this show, not the strongest outing from AEW pay-per-view wise. And that's not to discredit the talent. That's not to discredit a lot of the action that all these people put themselves through. These wrestlers, they had a hell of a night here. And my respect to everyone. The work was there. Everyone was working hard on this show. And it sucks because it really felt like the crowd, it did not come across that they were really into a lot of this show. Like 60-70% of this show, it felt like they were just sitting on their hands just watching. So, not the best crowd. If you were there in the arena, maybe you have a different experience, but watching on TV, on pay-per-view, didn't come across the best. But a lot of the action was there, and those two main events definitely were the highlight, especially the championship match for me. They were great, but they were not enough to completely save this show, but they were still good enough to prevent me from giving this show a complete thumbs down. It's more thumbs in the middle, slightly leaning towards down, but still thumbs in the middle nonetheless. But that about covers it here. Thank you all for listening. Why don't you comment down below, give me your thoughts on this show, and as always, if you like what you see and you like what you hear, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and follow me on Twitter at DerekJ Speaks, where I'll be covering more wrestling stuff throughout the week, the month, the years, what have you. So thank you. Check you guys later.